When I was looking around Wowhead for some inspiration, I noticed this axe is not really flashy or iconic. It actually has a pretty simple design. But what got my attention about this weapon was that its texture looks like it's actually made from wood. The closest colored wood that we have is elm wood, and this is the wood that we have the least amount of, but for this project it is just enough. This build will consist of 3 parts: the axe head, handle and pommel, and final assembly. So let's start with the most difficult one. This part will be made with a CNC machine, but before that I have to make a board from these 2 offcuts. After surfacing one uneven side, I started with the first phase of the 3D carving, which is roughing, which makes a rough shape of the model, so that the second phase, which is finishing, will have less work. You can see that it now has a shape similar to the axe head design, but it has to go through the finishing phase first for it to look like it's supposed to be. It might seem that working with a CNC machine is just to put in the toolpath, which is a bunch of coordinates that tells the machine what to do, start the milling process, leave and then come back to it once it's finished, apart from occasionally checking on it. And that is exactly what it is, but there is a lot more work that is required to get to this stage, like making the 3D model and making sure that it's doable on CNC, preparing the workstation and materials, check for potential errors, and fine-tuning the settings to have safe and effective milling. But yeah, I can't complain, because it does most of the work, but there will definitely be more projects like this, made with different methods. After finishing one side, I had to flip it to make the other side. And for that I drilled 2 holes in the center of the board for wooden pins to have it in the exact place, and once it was on the other side, I repeated the roughing and finishing phases. So now the axe head is finished. Roughly. There are still a couple of steps left to finish this, but now I have to make these crystals. And I'm going to be making them from epoxy resin. I luckily don't have to make all of them, because I already made these 2 center ones, which I made over a year ago when I was learning to make 3D printed molds for our first video on our channel about making dragon scale encrusted long blades from Sunwell Plateau, and I just have this footage of breaking them from the mold. Back then, I thought that I could make the mold from PLA material, which is a hard plastic, if I could make the walls thin enough. And it didn't really work, but after more experimenting, I found the best way to do this is to use flexible filament, to make the molds more bendable, and also to use wax as a release agent. So I made the molds, mixed a small amount of resin, added the pigment, which I didn't remember exactly which one I used on the bigger ones, but it was probably this turquoise, and poured it. Then I started removing all 15 tabs, which was way too many, but I wanted to make sure it stayed rigid during CNC carving. Before sanding the surface, I wiped both sides with wet cloth to raise the wood fibers to have better surface finish. The sanding took a pretty long time thanks to its uneven surface, so I'm not going to bore you with showing you the sanding process, but now the next step is to make these blue parts that I'm going to paint with water-based dye. This water dye is malachite color, which is bluish green, and the nice thing about this paint is that the texture is still visible when painted. But since this is water-based, it means that it will raise the wood fibers again, but not so much this time, since it was already sanded. With everything painted and lightly sanded, the axe head is now complete. For the second part, my brother is wood turning these components on lathe. This is once again elm wood, And right now he has to make it smaller and remove bunch of material to get the desired thickness. The original handle has a different pattern than we decided on, because we weren't sure how to make it like it is on the reference. So we decided on a 2-pattern handle, which I think is going to look really nice with everything assembled. This axe is made by brokers, who are, according to WoW Wiki, energy beings that act as soul traders, and they also sell and collect other things, I guess. The design similarities between them and this weapon are definitely there, and I really like how they look from these concepts. The pommel part is made from maple, because we ran out of elm wood, but it doesn't matter, since this part is supposed to be fully painted, and this wood is great at absorbing color. While making these parts, he also sanded the 2 epoxy crystals. Alright, so the handle parts are ready. So now they can be joined together with wooden pins, because gluing end grain to end grain like this will make unusably weak joint. So this pin will make this connection strong and secure. Drilling this at the right angle wasn't as easy as I thought, but with that being done, the second part is complete. So let's move on to the last part, which is final assembly and applying finish. It's always pretty stressful when gluing something as precise as this, and I didn't really drill the pinholes too precisely. So there is plenty of wiggle room, but I marked the exact rotation of each piece, and thanks to that it all aligns nicely. Well, except for one problem, because this one has its hole pretty off center, so I have to somehow stamp it onto the pommel, and I tried couple methods, but this one with the wax worked just enough to make out where the circle is supposed to be. Before gluing the rest of the handle parts, the pommel part has a pin going through it. It is visible on the bottom, and I mean nobody will see it. It's on the bottom, so there is no need to. I just couldn't look at it like that. One last thing to paint is the pommel, trying closely to match the color on the reference. And now I can glue it all together. I also completely missed this part, that there is supposed to be paint, even though I was looking at the reference images so many times. Now the exit is almost finished. I just have to glue on the crystals and apply oil. The main reason why I chose to do this axe is because it looked like it's made from wood, and I just like the design. And I know that this isn't anything iconic or popular, so this project is like a stepping stone for other more iconic weapons from WoW that we will make in the future with different methods of production, so that it's not going to be made from wood every time. And our main goal with these types of projects is to make the most accurate life-sized replicas of items like this one.